I think, fundamental to life. I think it's a core need that drives us to accomplish things and drives us to do better and drives us to make a better world and ourselves better. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Unless, the only reason that it can get into that area where it's not good for us is when we're completely taken over by it and we don't understand the energy. It's like if you understand the energy of it, that feeling inside of yourself, then you can temper it and you can work with it. And then you can be more constructive about how you're going to meet those things that you feel like you need in your life. I mean, let's say you want a better job. I don't know, let's just pick something. I can't, it doesn't matter what we pick. But let's just say you want a better job. Well, if the desire is so strong that you absolutely need to get into something else, that you quit your current job and become, have no source of income and no plan to get what you want, just that, you want to do something that you think would be really cool, you end up sort of jumping off a cliff and then having to scramble and it becomes very difficult to get to where you want to be. Whereas if you look at this and understand that you have this energy inside of you, this desire to be better, do better, feel better, and you don't let it take you over, then you can create a plan. You can create a way to get to where you want to be that gets you there eventually. It may take a little bit longer than what you'd like, but you don't go running off in a direction without any kind of how am I going to get there? And there are some people in this world that literally are yanked and tugged all day long by maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different things that are just so important to them that they feel like they're being grabbed by the scruff of the neck and yanked this way and then yanked that way. And well, what about this and what about that? And they end up, they suffer so much because they feel like nothing, that they can't fulfill the desire. The desire is more important than the end result. I've known people like this, and I guess some people would consider these sort of type A kind of people, where if they don't have a goal in front of them every day that's almost insurmountable, they feel no purpose in life. It's like, I need to feel like I have something that I'm headed towards, that I don't have, that if I had would be better, and if I get it, then I'm miserable because I don't have a goal anymore. And again, it's really just realizing where these things come from so that we can work with them and not be overtaken by them. That's the real problem. And like I started to say in the beginning, most people tend to focus on making sure that they have all of these things laid out in front of them, wants and desires and needs, so that they can feel accomplished, or they can feel good about themselves, or other people feel good about themselves, or other people feel good about you. And it leaves no time to enjoy what we have. And I think that's what the teachings talk about. When it talks about suffering, causes of suffering, realizing that there is a way out of suffering, and then in the Buddhist teachings, in that case, the Buddha explained the Eightfold Path, which basically was all these different ways of thinking and acting and being that, again, made you more mindful of what you were doing so that you could slow down and look to see that path out of suffering, and not feeling like you're just a runaway horse being driven by things that you can't even understand or don't even know exist. You're simply reacting instead of looking. And I've always had this thing about, and I'm not sure that I ever convey it well, because when I talk about things like this, people tend to look at things either black or white. So they'll sit there and say, well, he's saying you should have no desires, so maybe I should have no desires. Or you look at it and say, well, I have all these things and I think they actually get me somewhere in life, so I'm not really agreeing with him, so I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. a lot of the things I talk about have to do with stopping what you're doing momentarily or for a short period of time. And I call it sort of finding the ground underneath you. It's like if you can stop being affected by all these outside influences for just a short amount of time, that you feel grounded, that you say, okay, there's this and there's that and there's these things, but right at this moment, I'm completely content with what I have and how things are. If you can feel that sense of centeredness, then you can immediately turn around and start doing the same things you were doing before, but you do it from a place of centeredness instead of on the run or on the fly. It's like, running down the street and trying to do things as you run by them, as opposed to stopping and doing them one at a time, taking the time to see what it is that's going on, what it is that's driving you, and then looking for the best solution to the situation you're in. It's just a matter of slowing down. And that's really, I keep, again, trying to tie these things back into the ideas of mindfulness. That's really, to me, all mindfulness is stopping and being aware of what's going on around you at all levels, so that you can then look and say, okay, what can I do to make things the way I'd like them to be, without one thing making another worse? Because if there's many things in our lives that we want to do, and if we're trying to do all of them at once, sometimes we may get one working, but it destroys another. We may go after the best job in the world that gives us all the fame and glory we possibly want, but it ruins our relationship with the people that are close to us. And if we had stopped to consider what the ramifications were, we might have been able to figure out a way to do both and make them both very fruitful without destroying one to get the other. These things are not rocket science, and they're not overly profound, but I don't think that there are ways that most people think about their lives. I think to some degree everybody doesn't take the time to try and consider what the best means or ways there are to accomplish what they want, and to do that with full awareness of what the ramifications might be to ourselves and those around us. It's just another way to look at the whole idea that our lives are driven by this dissatisfaction or suffering, as some people. Suffering to me is too strong a word. Suffering to me is like agony, whereas dissatisfaction is more, it's that little feeling in the pit of your stomach. I don't care how happy you are. If you look, you'll sit there and say, well, yeah, but there's this little thing that's not quite right. It's just kind of a grinding away in the back of your mind that, yeah, well, it could be better. This is wonderful, but, if I looked hard enough, I could find something else that I need to do. And that's that energy. In a funny way, it's exactly where the creative force comes from. Because if we didn't have this slight dissatisfaction pushing us, we wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't pursue art. We wouldn't pursue, any kind of thing that we can excel in, because we wouldn't care. So again, it's not a bad thing, but it's something that we don't want to be at the mercy of. Because at the end of the day, I think most people are trying to create, I don't know if that's the right word, I'll use it, trying to create a life where they have a certain degree of contentment and peace, and that they don't feel like they're out of control with all the things going on around them. And the only way you really can do that is to create a relationship with all the things of your life. You have to be able to fit it into some type of worldview that you have, so that you feel like you're not out of control. Even when things seem like they're out of control, you're not. And the only way to do that is to take the time and a longer view than we normally take of things, and try and create a relationship of all the different things that are going on, and that we're being influenced by in this world. And that goes for not just, personal things or personal relationships, but also, political, social, all of these things. It's, a lot of desires are based in, so there's a whole category of desire that's based in guilt. It's like, I should be doing this, or what, I really ought to be helping this cause. I should get in an airplane and fly to Africa and help children that can't eat. We all sit around and think these things, or we see an ad in the paper or on TV or something, and it shows someone suffering, and it's just like, well, how can I sit here and not do anything? That needs to be looked at. Because most people will either knee-jerk help in whatever way they think, put $10 in the mail and then call it good. Or they'll just ignore it. It's just like, I can't think about that. That's too painful.